In the quiet that followed Part 1, a single detail hung suspended in the air of a forgotten records room. A 47-second digital footprint, a ghost in the machine. It was a login credential that should have been asleep, in a server closet that should have been empty, at 22:03, the precise hour a woman named Elena Reed ceased to exist in the world she knew. We left that ghost, printed on warm paper, in the hands of a clerk named Sarah Mirani. It was a key, but a key is a passive object. Its true power lies not in its shape, but in the door it fits, and in the tremor that passes through the hand brave enough or desperate enough to turn it. This is the story of the turning. This is the meticulous, slow-motion unraveling of a story everyone had accepted. The story of a helpful neighbor, a grieving friend, a pillar of a quiet community, and the simultaneous, chilling weaving of a new story in its place. A story written not in words, but in soil, in financial ruins, and in the quiet, calculated terror of a man who believed he had accounted for every variable. Every variable except one. This is what happens after the detail is found. Let us remain for a few moments longer with Sarah Mirani. Let us inhabit her world entirely. The records room is a cathedral of forgotten things. The air is chilled to a constant 68 degrees, a temperature for preserving paper, not for comforting people. It smells of ozone from the overhead fluorescence, of the faint, sweet decay of aging cardboard, and underneath it all, the clean, metallic scent of the server racks that line the back wall, their fans whispering a constant, breathless hymn. The printout in her hand has transformed. It is no longer just a record. It has become a threshold. On one side of it lies her ordinary reality of barcodes, filing codes, and quiet routine. On the other side lies an accusation, the potential unraveling of a narrative that had comforted and then defeated an entire town. Her mind is not racing. It is methodically presenting her with every reason to turn back. What if I've misinterpreted the protocol? What if there was a maintenance work order that never got logged? I am a clerk. He is a detective who lived this case for a year. He will think I'm an amateur seeing patterns in the static. But beneath this cascade of doubt, a colder, clearer current flows. It is the relentless logic of the data. Protocol states the backup credential is for remote use only. The log states the location was internal. The physical access roster shows a blank space for that entire evening. The timestamp is 22:03. These are not isolated facts. They are points on a map, and at the center of that map is a single human-shaped void. Her journey to Detective Leo Morales' office is 53 steps. She counts them, a subconscious ritual to ground herself. With each step, the paper seems to absorb more of the nervous warmth from her palm. The hallway linoleum is a faded, hospital green, worn to a shine in a path down the center. The fluorescent tubes above hum at a pitch that vibrates in her molars. She passes a framed photograph, a police department picnic from 15 years ago, smiling faces frozen in a time before this specific darkness had taken root. She arrives at his door. His name is etched into the frosted glass in black lettering. The vinyl in one corner has peeled away slightly. From within, she hears the muffled cadence of a one-sided phone conversation. A tired, gravel-textured voice saying, "I understand. Just follow the procedure. Do what you can." This is her final moment of anonymity, her last breath before she becomes the person who brought the ghost into the light. Her mind flashes not to the official missing person photo of Elena Reed, but to a candid shot she once saw in a local newsletter. Elena at a community garden party, head thrown back in laughter, a genuine smudge of dark soil on her cheekbone, a woman that belonged to a world. Her knuckles meet the cool glass, 3 soft, definitive raps. Detective Leo Morales exists in a state of managed exhaustion. His office is a landscape of controlled chaos. It smells of yesterday's coffee grounds, of lemon-scented wood polish worn thin, and the faint, chalky sweetness of the antacid tablets scattered on his desk blotter. When Sarah enters and places the paper before him with a quiet, "Sir, I might have found something," he does not see an overeager clerk. He sees a messenger. And the message is written in the only language that truly commands his attention, the language of inconsistency. He listens. His eyes, which moments before were skimming a burglary report with detached professional duty, undergo a subtle but profound shift. The weariness recedes, replaced by a sharp, hungry focus. He is not looking at Sarah, or even precisely at the paper. He is looking through them, down through the floor to the mental drawer where he had filed the Oakwood Vale case, a drawer he had sealed with the label "Unsolvable." He sees it, not just a line of text, but the thread, the single loose thread on a sweater he had long since considered finished, folded, and put away. "You said constellation," he murmurs, his voice a low rumble that seems to start in his chest. "That's the right word. We've been cataloging stars. You've just shown us the shape they make when you connect them." His thanks is not polite. It is heavy, laden with the gravitational pull of the work it implies. As Sarah turns to leave, her fingers curling around the cold, pitted brass of the doorknob, she hears the sound that will mark this before and after. Not a shout, not a gasp, the thick, whispering drag of a heavy manila folder being pulled across a laminate desk, the sound of a story being reopened. And in the resonance of that simple physical sound, a question takes form, a hook for everything that follows. If this detail was the loose thread, what terrible tapestry was it holding together? Alone now, under the stark, conical pool of light from his desk lamp, Morales is not reviewing a file. He is performing an autopsy on his own investigation. The shadows in the corners of the room feel deeper, colder. A familiar, acidic knot tightens in his stomach, the somatic signature of missed possibility. Before, he had read every interview transcript, every forensic report, searching for a rupture in the ordinary world, a stranger's face, a history of violence, a random, tragic collision of wrong place and wrong time. Now he reads with a new and terrible filter staining every line. What if the rupture was not in the world, but within a person? What if the monster had not been lurking in the shadows, but passing the potato salad at the community barbecue? He returns to the timeline, the immutable spine of the case. October 12th, 9:42 p.m. Elena Reed's last phone call with her sister. Her voice was cheerful, mundane. "I'm gonna go finish up some work in the office," she'd said. The call had ended with laughter. The original investigative window was vast and foggy, sometime after 9:42 p.m. Before midnight, it was a yawning chasm of mystery. But now he has a pinprick of light in that abyss. 22:03, the server login, the ghost's timestamp. He recalculates. 9:42 to 22:03. 21 minutes. He leans back in his chair, which groans in protest. 21 minutes. What universe of action can exist within 21 minutes? You can brew a pot of coffee. You can watch half of a sitcom. You can walk to a neighbor's house. You can have a conversation that begins with calm words and ends with a silence so profound it swallows lives. The window is not a chasm, it is a sniper's alley, narrow, precise, final. His index finger, calloused and blunt, traces down the list of interviewees. It stops at a familiar name. David Chen, Statement 17.
It was calm. It was helpful. It offered a mundane auditory detail, a barking dog, to root itself in the sensory reality of the night. It was the statement of a man with nothing to hide. Or it was the statement of a man who had studied the script for hiding in plain sight. Then Morales's eye, now tuned to a different frequency, catches a note he had skimmed 100 times, a supplemental report from the first responding patrol officer, Officer Jankowski. A routine neighborhood canvass the morning after the disappearance. The officer noted that David Chen was cooperative but appeared fatigued and slightly agitated, understandable given the circumstances. A standard observation. But then the very next line, observed a fresh laceration on the subject's right hand across the knuckles. Subject stated he sustained it gardening yesterday afternoon, rose thorns. A cut. At the time, it was a biological footnote. People cut themselves. Life is filled with small bloody accidents. Now Morales feels it, a tiny cold needle of doubt sliding into his mind. With a few clicks, he pulls up the digital crime scene photos of Elena Reed's kitchen. The scene was immaculate, no signs of a struggle. But there, on the polished granite lip of the kitchen island, a faint gray-brown smudge. The forensics report had labeled it transfer of particulate matter, non-diagnostic, consistent with ambient soil. It was catalogued, and then it was forgotten. A fresh cut on a hand, a smudge of soil on a kitchen counter, separated by paperwork, by assumptions, by the focus of an earlier narrative. They are orphaned facts. But in the new, suspicious silence of Morales's office, they begin to whisper to each other across the void. They do not prove anything, not yet, but they suggest a proximity, a terrible, intimate proximity. And here we must pause at our first subtle crossroads, our first necessary red herring. What if the cut was from gardening? What if the soil was simply tracked in by Elena's own backyard, by her own shoes, on an ordinary day? What if, in our desperate hunger to connect dots, we are sketching a picture that was never there? The mind of a detective on a fresh scent is a powerful instrument. It can find signal in noise, but it can also imagine monsters in the static. The question is not just what the evidence suggests, but what we are willing to believe. An alibi is more than a claim. It is a fortress constructed against the suspicions of time and place. David Chen's fortress was built on two seemingly impervious walls, the testament of the food delivery and the digital log of his computer activity. Morales knows his own perspective is now compromised. He is too close, the new theory already forming a lens in his eye. He needs a fresh, skeptical gaze. He calls in Detective Anna Ruiz. Ruiz is in her late 30s, with a calm that is not passive but deeply focused, like still water over a deep current. She is not invested in the old story. Her only allegiance is to the fracture, to the flaw. She begins with the delivery driver, a man named Carl. She chooses not an interrogation room, but a quiet booth at a diner that smells of decades-old fryer grease and weak coffee. The vinyl seat creaks under her. She does not confront, she reconstructs. She shows him images on a tablet, not in a formal lineup, but shuffled casually with photos of other houses, other deliveries. Take your time, Carl. That night at the Chen residence, walk me through it from when you turned onto the street. Carl takes a sip of his water, the ice cubes clinking. It was normal, you know. The porch light was on. The guy came to the door, took the bag. Can you describe him for me? Average, you know. He was kind of in the doorway. The light was behind him from inside. Ruiz swipes. A clear, well-lit headshot of David Chen from a charity golf tournament. He is smiling. Was it this man? Carl leans in, squints. Yeah, I think so. That looks like him. Ruiz swipes again. This time it is a photograph of a different man of similar height and build, caught from behind, wearing a hoodie. Or could it have been this man? Carl's certainty, which had seemed solid a moment before, visibly fissures. His memory, once a clear snapshot, begins to pixelate details, dissolving into the digital haze of time. I don't know. It was dark on the porch. He just took the bag and said thanks, real quiet-like. I had 3 more deliveries. I was in a hurry. The cornerstone of the alibi, under the gentle, relentless pressure of alternative possibility, does not shatter. It crumbles quietly into sand. This is not proof of deceit. It is proof of fragility. Then Ruiz turns her attention to the second wall, the digital alibi. She sits in the forensic analysis lab, a room kept 10 degrees colder than the rest of the building. The air smells of ozone and static. The only light comes from the blue glow of monitor banks, painting their faces in pale hues. Lynn, the forensic analyst, is a woman of profound and economical silence. Ruiz poses the question that changes the axis of their inquiry. His computer shows continuous activity, but can your analysis tell us if the man was there at the keyboard, or just that the machine was executing tasks? Lynn does not smile, but her eyes sharpen behind her glasses. She gives a slow, single nod. "We look for the ghost in this machine," she says, her voice soft but precise. Human interaction is messy. It has pauses, it has backtracking, it has erratic mouse trails, moments of distraction. Automated scripts, they are perfect, they are mathematical, they are lonely. They formally request the original hard drive of David Chen's computer. And here, the investigation encounters its first documented surprise, a twist not in the evidence itself, but in its palpable, frustrating absence. David's lawyer, Arthur Vance, a man with a voice like polished riverstone, provides a laptop. It is the correct make and model, but within an hour, Lynn knows. The drive's serial number, its firmware signatures, they do not align with the manufacturer's data for the original purchase. This is not the heart of the machine from that October. It is a transplant. Vance is prepared. His explanation is delivered with an air of regretful finality. A tragedy of technology, Detective. The original drive suffered a catastrophic failure, a head crash, irrecoverable. This occurred approximately 6 months after your initial investigation concluded. Mr. Chen had it replaced at a local repair shop, TechWorks, a modest establishment. Unfortunately, it went out of business last year. There is no invoice, only the misfortune of fragile electronics in a digital age. A dead end, a clean, elegant, utterly immovable dead end. But to Ruiz, sitting in the cold blue silence of the lab, it does not feel like an end, it feels like a silhouette. The absence of the hard drive becomes in her mind a presence more potent than any file it might have contained. It is a silence where there should have been a hum,
a shadow where a tool once lay. This is our second mini cliffhanger, a pivot point in the narrative. The destroyed hard drive, was it a commonplace tragedy, or was it the single most critical act of evidence disposal David Chen ever executed? If he was this meticulous with the digital, what else had he thought to cleanse from the physical world? While Ruiz applies pressure to the alibi, Morales goes hunting for the engine that could drive such an act, the why. Crime is often a creature of pressure, financial, emotional, existential, a vice tightening until something breaks. He orders a forensic financial audit of a depth that would trespass into obsession. The public facade of David Chen is one of understated, comfortable success. The audit reveals the scaffolding, and it is trembling. It reveals a secret portfolio, a series of moves made not for cautious clients, but as a desperate personal gamble. He had funneled significant capital, his own life savings, and, critically, funds from a select group of trusting long-term clients into a speculative crypto mining venture. For a few euphoric months, the numbers on the screen had soared, and digital El Dorado. Then, in the spring, the fantasy began to tarnish, then to corrode. By September, the losses were not just red numbers, they were a silent, screaming vortex threatening to consume his career, his reputation, his very identity. But then, the audit reveals a transaction that makes Morales' breath catch. He leans forward, the desk lamp casting the line item into stark relief.
But then, the audit reveals a transaction that makes Morales' breath catch. He leans forward, the desk lamp casting the line item into stark relief. October 10th, a transfer, $75,000, from Elena Reed to David Chen. Memo, loan, investment rebalance. A loan from the victim 2 days before the victim vanishes. Morales stares. One narrative presents itself immediately, warmly, friendship, support, a lifeline between former partners. But another narrative, a colder, darker harmony, whispers just beneath. What if this was not a lifeline, but a temporary patch on a ruptured dam? What if Elena, with her own sharp financial mind, had glimpsed the terrifying truth metastasizing in his books? What if the loan came with unbreakable strings? David, this will stabilize it for a week, but this stops now. You have to come clean. You have to disclose this to everyone. We have a meeting on Thursday morning to plan how we do that. He needs a whisper of that meeting. He subpoenas Elena's full email archives. What returns is fragmentary, a digital ghost town after a storm. The bodies of most emails are corrupted, text reduced to gibberish, but the metadata, the headers, the senders, the timestamps, the subject lines often survives, like tombstones in a flooded graveyard. And there it is, October 11th, 4:18 p.m., from Elena Reed to David Chen. Subject, urgent, tomorrow. The preview fragment, salvaged from a server cache, reads, "Can't cover for this anymore. Meeting at 10 a.m. Full disclosure to the board." Full disclosure. The phrase detonates in the quiet of Morales' office. It is not a scream, it is a death sentence for the life David Chen had built. Disclosure meant professional annihilation, the loss of his license, a hurricane of lawsuits, social and financial exile. It meant the transformation from respected pillar to proven fraud. It meant becoming the very monster he was spending every waking moment pretending not to be. Elena vanished on the night of October 12th. The meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. on October 13th. The pressure now had a countdown, and David Chen was standing at the epicenter, hearing the seconds tick away, each one a hammer fall on the shell of his fabricated life. But we must, again, step to the edge of the path and consider the alternative, our second red herring. What if we are misreading the language? What if full disclosure meant something else entirely in their business context? What if David was in fact the victim of a horrific cosmic coincidence, and this towering edifice of evidence is merely a house of cards built on a single misunderstood phrase? The human mind is a narrative engine. It craves story. We must be eternally vigilant of the stories we are too desperate to believe. With a motive now crystallized into a cold, hard geometry, and the alibi walls showing significant stress fractures, Morales obtains his warrant. The search of David Chen's home is an exercise in profound, unsettling normalcy. The air smells of lemon-scented cleaner and fabric softener. Every surface is bare, every object angled with intentional neatness. It feels less like a lived-in home and more like a museum exhibit titled The Innocent Life. They find nothing. The sheer, aggressive cleanliness feels like a rebuttal to their very presence. But the warrant is broad. It encompasses all associated properties, and that is how they find the storage unit. Rented under the name of Margaret Chen, David's 82-year-old mother. Paid for from a small, obscure bank account that appears to have no other purpose. Unit B17, A+ storage, a facility 30 miles north in a town where the air carries the scent of pine resin and the distant, constant sigh of the interstate. The day they open it is gray and still, the sky a sheet of low cloud. The metal roll-up door protests with a shriek that echoes in the concrete canyon of the storage complex. The air that exists from the dark rectangle is perfectly still, dry, and carries the unmistakable, melancholy scent of mothballs and decaying paper. The unit is a curated museum of a benign past. A faded floral armchair, cardboard boxes labeled in precise handwriting, Xmas ornaments, old tax records, college texts. It's a shrine to ordinary memory. But Morales's gaze is drawn past the curated nostalgia, to the far back corner, to a single blue plastic storage bin. It is identical to others, yet it sits apart, isolated like an island. His gloved hands, which have handled 1,000 pieces of evidence, find the lid. The plastic is cold. He lifts it. The first layer is folded clothing, a black technical fabric sweater, zipped, dark jeans neatly pressed. Beneath them, the weight changes. He lifts a pair of sturdy lace-up work boots. They are unexpectedly heavy, caked in dried blackish mud, packed deep into the aggressive tread. This is not garden sorrel. This is the dense, loamy mud of a place seldom walked, a place shaded and damp, and at the very bottom, wrapped with care in an old faded tea towel adorned with sunflowers, lies the object that transmutes the case from a compelling theory into a tangible, heartbreaking truth. A garden trowel. It's an old tool, its wooden handle worn smooth and dark from years of use, from the grip of a hand, and there, carved not with haste, but with a kind of deliberate care into that weathered wood, are two initials, E.R., Elena Reed. Morales doesn't move. He simply holds it, feeling its weight, its solid reality. The metal blade is stained, not with anything dramatic, but with common earth. This is no longer data. This is not a timestamp or a bank record. This is an artifact, an intimate, personal object from a victim's life, secreted away in a tomb of normalcy, a keepsake of a terrible secret. It is not merely proof of proximity, it is proof of violation, proof of a memory he couldn't bear to destroy, yet dared not keep close. The soil on the boots is sent for spectral and botanical analysis. It yields a unique signature, a specific mix of clay, pollen, and decayed foliage that matches one secluded, damp hollow in the sprawling regional park that borders Oakwood Vale, a place off the maintained trails, a natural vault shrouded by thick ferns and the ancient, towering columns of cedar trees. And the trowel. When shown a high-resolution photograph, Elena's husband, James, does not cry out. He makes a sound that seems to be punched from the center of his being, a short, sharp expulsion of air that is all pain. His face collapses. "I carved those," he manages, the words feck, "for her birthday. She called it her lucky trowel. It always sat on her potting bench, right by the back door." In the cataclysmic grief that followed her disappearance, the absence of a simple tool had been meaningless, invisible. A missing wife eclipses a missing trowel. But here it was, not lost, archived, a ghost given solid, mournful form. This discovery feels in many ways like an ending. The puzzle seems complete, but it is only the final piece for the district attorneys, for the cold logic of the court. For Detective Morales, it marks the beginning of the most delicate, the most human phase of the pursuit, the extraction of truth, and the final sacred task of bringing Elena home. They have him, the digital ghost, the financial vice, the hidden muddy boots, the intimate, devastating trophy. They could arrest David Chen tonight. The paperwork is ready. But Morales understands the mechanics of justice. An arrest triggers a different machinery of silence, of legal maneuverings, of pleas and strategies crafted in windowless rooms. He doesn't want just a legal victory. He wants a geographical one. He wants to return Elena Reed to her family. So they invite David and his lawyer Arthur Vance back to the station, not for an interrogation, but for a presentation. The room is aggressively neutral. Beige walls, a scarred wooden table, chairs that are neither comfortable nor uncomfortable. The lighting is flat and shadowless. David Chen arrives wearing a crisp light blue button-down and tan chinos. He looks like a man on his way to a modest business lunch or a parent-teacher conference. His face is arranged to an expression of polite, slightly weary attention. Morales begins not with accusation, but with exposition. He lays out the pieces of the story they have built, one by one, like an archaeologist assembling a skeleton. His voice is calm, measured, the tone of a professor outlining a complex theorem. The 47-second login, the catastrophic, hidden financial losses, the $75,000 loan, the email, full disclosure. He speaks clearly, methodically. He does not mention the storage unit, not yet. Then he reaches into a plain manila folder and slides a single sheet of paper across the polished table. It is a high-resolution satellite photograph, the dense green expanse of the regional park. And in the northeast quadrant, drawn with precise red ink, is a small, perfect circle. "We're going to search here, David." Morales' voice drops, becomes almost conversational. "The soil on your boots was very specific. It gave us a map. We're going to bring Elena home." He lets that statement hang, its weight settling over the room. "And when we do," Morales continues, his eyes locked on David's, "the story that is told to her mother, to her husband, to the reporters waiting outside, to the jury that will sit in judgment, to you, in your own mind, every single night for the rest of your life. That story is being written right now in this room. You have one final piece of authorship left, the last true choice you will ever make." Morales leans back, his hands flat on the table. Was it a tragic accident, a terrible argument that escalated beyond any possible intent? a moment of blind panic followed by a worse, more calculated one. Or was it something colder from the very beginning? Right now, you are a ghost in a machine. Soon, you will just be a man who did a terrible thing. But what kind of terrible thing? That is the only part of this you have left to decide. Morales falls silent. The room becomes a vacuum. The only sound is the almost imperceptible hum of the building's ventilation system, a sterile white noise. David Chen's eyes drop to the photograph. He stares at the red circle. He does not blink. All the performance, the helpful neighbor, the concerned friend, the composed professional, it drains from his features like color from a photograph, leaving behind something pale, stark, and fundamentally hollow. He is not looking at a map. He is staring into a memory. He is seeing the dappled forest light, the specific shape of the ferns, the feel of the damp earth, the unbearable weight in his hands. Slowly, with an effort that seems physical, he turns his head to look at his lawyer. Arthur Vance meets his gaze. The lawyer's eyes are the eyes of a strategist who has just seen his last, best piece swept from the board. They are hard, professional, but in their depths, Morales sees a flicker of something else. Realization. Surrender. David Chen does not speak. His shoulders slump, a movement of minute but total defeat. He gives a single, almost imperceptible nod. It is not a nod of defiance or of anger. It is the nod of profound, absolute exhaustion. The exhaustion of holding a mask perfectly in place for 18 months, through searches, through vigils, through sympathetic glances and probing questions. Arthur Vance closes his eyes for a brief second. When he opens them, he lets out a long, slow sigh, the sound of pressure leaving a vessel, the sound of a strategy deflating. He turns to Detective Morales. "Detective," he says, his once polished voice now softened with resignation. "My client is prepared to provide the specific location in the context of a discussion regarding a plea arrangement to second-degree murder and evidence tampering." The ghost has been given a name, a motive, a map, and now, finally, a voice. Elena Reed was recovered from that fern-covered hollow, carried out with a reverence that the forest had not offered. Her family received the awful, necessary gift of closure. David Chen pleaded guilty, exactly as promised. He was sentenced. The town of Oakwood Vale was spared the theatrical pain of a trial. Instead, it absorbed a quieter, more insidious injury, a permanent hairline fracture in its reality. The man who had handed out bottled water to searchers was the reason the search was necessary. The file was closed. A life was laid to rest, another consigned to a concrete cell, the arithmetic of justice balanced. But some stories are rhizomes. They resist a clean ending. They spread questions in their wake. The detail that began the unraveling was a 47-second anomaly in a server log, a digital phantom. We followed that phantom to its human source. We witnessed the pressure, the hidden evidence, the final silent confession. David Chen was not a criminal mastermind. He was an ordinary man who made one horrific, irreversible choice and then dedicated every subsequent moment to the unsustainable maintenance of a lie. He mowed his lawn. He waved to neighbors. He lived a double life, not of international espionage, but of breathtaking, mundane betrayal. And he came within a hairbreadth of succeeding. He was almost just a footnote in an unsolved file, a sad, sympathetic figure in a community's tragedy. He was undone not by a screaming eyewitness or a flash of brilliant deduction, but by a clerk's mundane diligence, a detective's willingness to re-interrogate his own conclusions, and a single line of code that refused to fit the narrative he had so carefully written. So, we are left here in the unsettling quiet after the storm has passed. The facts are settled, the mystery is solved, and yet a new, more profound question forms, a bridge to a potential part 3, a shadow cast by this very story. We caught this ghost because it left a footprint, a digital smudge, a tangible misplaced trophy. But what of the ghosts that leave no trace? What of the stories that are so flawlessly maintained, the performances so seamless, the details so meticulously aligned that they present not a single incongruity, no 47-second gap, no misplaced trowel, no inconsistent soil sample, no forgotten email fragment? How many people are walking among us right now, living stories that are complete, coherent, internally consistent, and utterly, terrifyingly false? Stories we will never think to question, not because they are true, but because they contain no detail, not a single tiny, overlooked detail that changes everything. Because every detail, no matter how small, has already been carefully arranged to fit.